What's up, everybody? We've got portal movement all across the SEC. We'll get you caught up on all the latest moves, visits, recruiting, basketball news, and much more. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. We're going to go all around the conference, get you caught up on all the latest news going around with the transfer portal. We're into the thick of this. We're starting to see some bigger names enter the portal, so we're going to hit on it all. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's dive right into it. We will jump into, first off, transfers who have just committed to SEC teams. So these are transfers from other schools coming to the SEC. And we have to start with Henry Parrish. And not a big surprise here is Ole Miss bringing back a very familiar face. Former Miami running back Henry Parrish Jr. is back in Oxford after 2 seasons in Miami. And Parrish had made plans to enter the portal back in March when he opted for the portal over a third season with the Miami Hurricanes. A lot of people expected he was going to end up back at Ole Miss, and he will be a fifth-year super senior this fall. Will use his COVID season, and he announced on Monday he's heading back to the Ole Miss Rebels. He joined the Rebels as part of a 2020 recruiting class out of the Miami area. Played in 10 games as a true freshman, ran for 263 yards and 2 touchdowns. His workload increased in 2021 with over 500 yards rushing and 3 scores. But running backs coach Kevin Smith left Ole Miss for Miami, and Parrish followed him there. So that's where he's been. But Ole Miss, they're looking for a running back to replace Quinshon Judkins, who left this offseason for Ohio State. And they're bringing back Ulysses Bentley, the former SMU running back who, by the way, when he was at SMU, ran for over 900 yards and 11 touchdowns. But he was always kind of a complimentary back. Now, they did bring in LSU transfer Logan Diggs this offseason, but he's banged up. And then just a couple days ago, they added Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, transfer from New Mexico, ran for 1,100 yards and 17 touchdowns last year at New Mexico. Now, Lane Kiffin the other day was asked what transfer running back Logan Diggs' timetable is and when we should expect to see him again. He said, well, he had knee surgery. Our hope is that he helps us at some point this season, but how fast, I don't know. That'll be a lot to do with how fast he comes back, obviously, but that could be anywhere from the beginning to the end of the season. So, common sense says Logan Diggs is not going to be ready for the start of the season. You're going to have Ulysses Bentley, and then you're going to have your 2 transfers. And Henry Parrish coming over from Miami, and, of course, the Krosky-Merritt kid coming over from New Mexico. So they lose Judkins. He was the SEC's rushing touchdown leader last year, but they got some good backs back there to help fill the void there at Ole Miss. We'll see what it looks like. All right, over at Alabama, they make a big pickup in a kicker. Normally we don't put kicker news in here, but Lou Groza Award-winning kicker Graham Nicholson going to join the Crimson Tide. He took to social media this week to announce he is heading to Tuscaloosa after 3 seasons at Miami of Ohio. He said, I want to thank Miami University for believing in me out of high school, welcoming me in, but I've decided to transfer for my last season. I'll finish my career at the University of Alabama. Nicholson leaves Miami of Ohio as the school's record holder for made field goals in a single season. He made 27 last year, missed just 1 field goal attempt, so he made 96% of his kicks. His career mark of 84.5% over 3 seasons is tops in Miami of Ohio history. And last season, he set an NCAA record making 25 straight field goals. He was 35 of 37 on extra points. So he finished the year with 116 points scored. He was named first-team All-American by the Walter Camp Award, Sporting News, NAP, along with many other publications. So, look, Bama loses a great kicker, but they replace him with a great one in Graham Nicholson. So get to know the name. This kid is going to come in and make a ton of kicks for Alabama this coming year. All right, over at Auburn, they made a trio of pickups here the last day or so. We start with Arkansas State transfer edge Keyron Crawford made his decision while on an official visit. He is heading to Auburn. And it's a full overhaul of Auburn's defensive front. They signed Keyron Crawford. He's the third addition on the D-line out of the portal. Crawford will have 2 years of eligibility remaining, coming to Auburn from Arkansas State. But he joins fellow defensive lineman Philip Blidi, who comes over from Indiana, and Isaiah Raikes from USC, but really out of Texas A&M. And head coach Hugh Freeze, he emphasized adding more talent out of the transfer portal, particularly up front of that defensive line. Auburn allowed the fourth most rushing yards per game in the SEC last year, and they were seventh in sacks. So they lose Marcus Harris to the NFL draft, had to make it a point of emphasis. They moved former linebackers coach Josh Aldridge to be in charge of the edge rushers, and new DC DJ Durkin, he will coach the linebackers. But Raikes spent 4 seasons at College Station, decided to enter the transfer portal in December. He committed to USC, spent the spring there, but decided not to stay there. So he will head to Auburn. The past 2 seasons, he appeared in 24 games for the Aggies, made 4 starts, was named a season-long team captain in 2022, and has had his fair share of tackles for a loss, a couple of sacks here and there, and just a big change up front. Philip Blidi, Isaiah Raikes, and Keyron Crawford all coming in there to make a difference for Auburn. By the way, Crawford started all 13 games for Arkansas State last season, had 6.5 sacks, 11.5 tackles for a loss. So combine that with the guys they brought in from high school, Amaris Williams and Jamonte Waller. And then in the transfer window back in January, they brought in Gage Keys from Kansas and Trill Carter from Texas. So a lot of new faces there on the Auburn defensive line. Going to have to get used to seeing those guys. All right, other transfer portal news. Over at Arkansas, former Jacksonville State linebacker Larry Worth III announced on Sunday he is going to transfer to Arkansas. He chose the Razorbacks over Minnesota. He appeared in all 13 games this past season at Jacksonville State, finished with 63 tackles, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, and an interception. He recorded a career-high 12 tackles and a sack in the New Orleans Bowl against Louisiana. He's 6'4", 210 pounds, played high school ball in Jacksonville, Florida. He's the second transfer linebacker that Arkansas has brought in this offseason, along with Xavier Sori out of Georgia. They are young at that position. They have second-year players in Brad Spence and Carson Dean, but they needed some proven linebackers, and Larry Worth out of Jacksonville State is certainly that. All right, over at Oklahoma, former SMU O-lineman Brandon Hickman announced he is committing to Oklahoma. Spent 4 seasons with the SMU Mustangs, started the final 33 games he played, 12 games in 2022, and all 14 this past season. Was named to the Remington Trophy preseason watch list and was a second-team All-American AAC selection. He was a star center at SMU, had a reputation being an intelligent football player, high football IQ, leadership skills. So big-time addition there for Brent Venables and crew, adding offensive lineman Brandon Hickman from SMU to their O-line. All right, how about guys who are leaving the conference? Well, Mississippi State, they're going to lose former Vanderbilt and Mississippi State quarterback Mike Wright. He announced yesterday he is entering the transfer portal. He transferred to State from Vanderbilt, made 14 career starts, accounted for 34 career touchdowns. Remember, 2 years ago, beat Kentucky when he was at Vanderbilt. And we had him on the show last offseason. Really like Mike Wright. Talked about his decision to go to Mississippi State, was backing up Will Rogers, but of course, coaching changes and a whole offensive scheme change and everything else. So we wish Mike Wright the best of luck. We'll see where he ends up. But a guy who has spent the last couple seasons at 2 different SEC schools, we'll see where he ends up. All right, over at Auburn, linebacker Wesley Steiner entered the transfer portal, played 4 seasons at Auburn, logging career highs in 2022, but over the course of his career finished with 86 total tackles, 49 solo. So we'll see where he ends up at Arkansas. Starting defensive back Lorando Snatch Johnson, he entered the portal, 29 tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, and an interception last season. He came in from Baylor, where he had started, and spent a year there at Arkansas. Also, Arkansas offensive lineman Parrish Patterson entering the portal, was a 3-star prospect, and fourth Arkansas O-lineman to enter the transfer portal this offseason, joining Devin Manuel, Andrew Chambly, and Joey Sua. Razorbacks have seen 31 players enter the transfer portal this offseason. Over at Tennessee, defensive lineman Jayson Jenkins will enter the transfer portal. Played sparingly over his time with the Volunteers, amassing 6 total tackles over 2 seasons. Over at Ole Miss, defensive tackle Demarcus Smith announced he will enter the portal, spent 3 seasons with the Rebels, appeared in 2 games last year, made 1 tackle. Over at Kentucky, wide receiver Shamar Porter will enter the transfer portal, finished his first and only season in Lexington. And also Kentucky wide receiver Ardell Banks entering the transfer portal, spent 1 season with the Wildcats. Over at Vanderbilt, Wisconsin will add former Vandy O-lineman Leighton Nelson. He committed to the Badgers, announcing his commitment Monday afternoon on Twitter. There you have it. That's the latest on guys who are coming to the SEC and guys who are leaving the SEC. When we return, we'll hit on the latest guys making visits who may be coming to the SEC. You got all that? Can you keep up? All right, Locked On SEC. More coming your way here in just a second. But first, this episode is presented to you by our friends over at the Game Time app. Look, Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball. That makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time is going to take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And wherever you are across SEC country, if you're in the Texas area, Houston, looking to go to an Astros game, Rangers game in Dallas. If you're in Atlanta, we got a ton of Braves fans in SEC country, or you're heading down to Florida, want to go to Miami Marlins game, whatever it is, wherever you are in the SEC landscape, plenty of MLB action to take in this summer. Make a quick road trip and use the Game Time app. They got last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports on the Game Time app. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the event. And, of course, the all-in pricing. Love that feature. Shows your total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Go take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, get $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. This episode also presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It is playoff time right now in the NBA, NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. I've been enjoying watching some of the NBA playoff action. You can get in on it night in and night out. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That is $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from home runs to slam dunks, slap shots, whatever it is, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. What are you waiting for? Go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. Again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's the website you go to. Get signed up today. Download the app. They are FanDuel. They are America's #1 sports book. Check them out today. All right, diving back into it. I want to remind you guys, NFL Draft coming up later this week. Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft. Go hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise. Live reactions from our local college football experts. Even the fantasy football angle got you covered. Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on the Locked On NFL Draft page on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, we got to dive back into it. We hit on guys who are coming to the SEC, guys who are leaving the SEC. How about guys in the transfer portal interested in SEC teams? Keeping up with this? All right, let's dive back into it. We go out to Georgia. As we talked about this a couple days ago, Arizona State quarterback Jaden Rashada. He is on the move, the former top 100 recruit. He will be in Athens visiting Georgia today through tomorrow, according to On3 Sports. The top quarterback available in the portal was expected to visit Georgia on Monday, but he was on a flight to Athens Monday afternoon, and the former 4-star, he will have 4 years of eligibility remaining, can play immediately. And a lot of people think he can add some good depth to that quarterback room at Georgia. Of course, Carson Beck coming back. He's got his last year of eligibility, and then a whole lot of questions in the future. They lost Brock Vandegrift this offseason. He went to Kentucky to go take their starting job. You got Gunnar Stockton, who's waiting in the wings. You got Ryan Puglisi, who just got there. But look, Jaden Rashada is a guy who missed most of the spring with a non-football thumb injury. Returned last week to practice, saw some 11-on-11 time. So would add some good depth to that Georgia quarterback room. We'll see if Jaden Rashada ends up committing to Georgia here via the portal. Over at LSU, Kent State star defensive lineman C.J. West. He is the transfer portal's number 3 uncommitted defensive lineman, and he's looking at a bevy of Big Ten schools. But LSU, Wisconsin, Indiana, Rutgers, and Michigan are all in his mix. He also said Florida State has reached out to him, but he has 3 visits at all 2 Big Ten schools coming up. He had 50 tackles and a forced fumble at Kent State last year, but LSU is on his list of schools. And also former Houston wide receiver Samuel Brown is reportedly scheduling visits to Texas A&M, Miami, and LSU. Led the Houston Cougars with 62 catches last year for over 800 yards and 3 touchdowns. Was an honorable mention All Big 12 selection. So we'll see if he ends up at either LSU or A&M on his list of schools. Over at Arkansas, Louisville linebacker transfer Jalen Alderman will take an official visit to Arkansas on Wednesday this week. He's one of the top linebackers available in the portal. We talked about it. Sam Pittman is looking for as many proven linebackers as he can through the portal. So Jalen Alderman out of Louisville, a name to watch there over at Arkansas. Over at Texas A&M, Penn State receiver Keandre Lambert-Smith had a visit with them this week. Reports are USC is pushing for a visit, but he was the Nittany Lions' leading receiver last season. He made an official visit to Auburn over the weekend. Said it was great. Said he's big on relationships. Said Coach Marcus Davis. All those guys were genuine guys with him, but Auburn, of course, looking to add a receiver out of the transfer portal. And sounds like A&M looking to do the same. So Keandre Lambert-Smith out of Penn State. Will he go to A&M? Will he go to Auburn? Keep an eye on that one. Over at Alabama, Crimson Tide been busy on the recruiting trail, but also looking around in the transfer portal. They recently extended an offer to FSU transfer corner Greedy Vance Jr. He spent the first 2 seasons of his college career at Louisville and then transferred to Florida State in Tallahassee, played in 27 games there, making 5 starts. And as of today, Vance has an offer from Alabama and is an option for them. Now, reports say the expectation is that he is going to transfer to USC. So keep an eye on that. But Greedy Vance, an offer from Alabama, or reports say likely going to end up at USC. In addition to that, Arizona State corner transfer Ed Woods. He will visit Alabama Friday this week. He's a former 2-year starter for the Sun Devils and will reportedly spend the entire weekend in Tuscaloosa. Over at Oklahoma, defensive line has been an emphasis for them during this transfer portal window, and that includes former Louisville defensive tackle Jermaine Lowell. Started his career at Arizona State. He's posted 140 tackles, 25 tackles for a loss, and 12.5 sacks in his career. He's got 1 season of eligibility remaining, looking to make the most of it, and Oklahoma selling him on the idea of competing for playing time as they move into the SEC. Be on a big stage there. So we'll see if Jermaine Lowell from Louisville opts to go to Oklahoma. Over at Vanderbilt, several 24/7 crystal ball picks for Vanderbilt to land New Mexico State tight end Eli Stowers. A lot of connections there with him. He's a former Texas A&M signee who was initially a quarterback before he shifted to tight end. Caught 35 passes last season for 366 yards at New Mexico State. He's the number 14 uncommitted prospect right now in the 24/7 sports portal rankings, but sounded like Vanderbilt could be the landing spot there for him. Over at Mississippi State, they are still in the mix for Oregon State running back transfer Damian Martinez. He has taken visits to Arizona and Mississippi State. He was scheduled to visit Kentucky and Miami this week. Instead, he will only take 1 final visit, and that will be with Miami. A lot of people think he's going to end up with the Hurricanes. Obviously, look, Henry Parrish just transferred out of there. But Mississippi State's still in the mix there for Oregon State running back Damian Martinez. And over at Mizzou, not transfer portal related, but how about athletic director related? Memphis AD Laird Veach is leaving Memphis for Missouri. according to reports. He will be leaving to take the same position at the University of Missouri. He served as AD at Memphis since October of 2019 and vice president and director of intercollegiate athletics since June of 2021. Spent 6 years at Missouri in a variety of roles from 1997 to 2002. After that, he was hired at Learfield Sports in 2003 as the general manager for Mizzou Sports Properties. So a lot of ties to Mizzou, and he's going to be heading back there. So Laird Veach, Memphis AD, going to be heading to Columbia to go be Mizzou's AD. And one more note here. This is draft related. Saw this note come out yesterday. LSU head coach Brian Kelly is going to reportedly join Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas at the NFL draft this Thursday in Detroit. First round TV coverage for the NFL draft starts at 7 Thursday evening. Will air on ESPN, ABC, NFL Network. A total of 13 players have accepted invites to be on site for the NFL draft on Thursday evening. 7 of those 13 players coming from programs within the SEC, with both LSU and Alabama leading the way with 3 each. So Brian Kelly going to join his squad there. Of course, we'll get to see Nick Saban on the draft coverage, now working with his new employer at ESPN. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. When we return, we'll hit on some recruiting nuggets for you. That's coming your way here in just a second. First, I want to remind you guys, look, if you are a competitive person and you think you can have what it takes to compete with your friends, well, you need to go check out Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. Plus, the best part is messing with your friends. You can charge them rent on iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly board game. But now you can also heist their vaults of riches for yourself. And the leaderboards show you who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just your competitive side that loves it. You can team up with your friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn some huge awards. So what are you waiting for? Get in the game. Go join your friends and have some fun. Download the Monopoly Go app for free in the App Store or Google Play. Again, that is Monopoly Go, exclamation point on the end. You can find it on the App Store or the Google Play Store. But get started today. Have some fun with your friends and enjoy this football offseason. Getting competitive, keeping those competitive spirits alive over at Monopoly Go. All right, continue on here, Locked On SEC, and we've been hitting on a lot of the transfer portal news, man, and it's really starting to come and go here. It was a little slow the first couple days out of the gates, and now we're starting to see some bigger names on the move, starting to see a lot of guys come into the SEC, but look, it's recruiting time. We're going to talk with our recruiting insider, Brian Smith, later in the week, but let's hit on a couple of recruiting tidbits and guys committing to schools just this week. And first, let's head out to Oxford over at Ole Miss as 4-star linebacker Jacoby Hobson committed to Ole Miss, chose the Rebels over the likes of Mississippi State, Auburn, and Texas. He's the number 171 overall prospect, the number 20 overall linebacker in the class of 2025. He's 6'1", 205 pounds, has made over 10 trips to Oxford throughout his recruitment. He told On3, I like Ole Miss. I like the coaches. I'm high on them. The energy there is great. The staff really recruits me hard, and they hit me up almost every day. Coach Pete Golding is always recruiting me. They want me to come by and be that hybrid linebacker for them. And when I'm there, the vibe is good. Just feel the love from Ole Miss. So big pickup there. 4-star linebacker Jacoby Hobson committing to the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, the addition of Hobson gives Ole Miss 5 commitments to the class of 2025. He's the 3rd Mississippian to join their group, joining 5-star running back Kylan Deere and Dylan Alfred, a 4-star wide receiver. So Ole Miss's class now ranks 17th in the nation, number 9 in the SEC, according to On3. Over at Mississippi State, Tyshawn Willis committed to Mississippi State, an edge rusher, 4-star prospect in the 24/7 Sports Composite Rankings in the class of 2025. He's a Mississippi native, 4th player committed to Jeff Lebby in his upcoming class, joining 4-star quarterback Kamario Taylor, 3-star linebacker A.J. Rice, and punter Jack Richardson. Tyshawn Willis had offers from Jackson State, Baylor, and Ole Miss. as announcement comes after 3-star defensive lineman Jeremiah McLeod decommitted from Mississippi State over the weekend. Over at Florida, Billy Napier, offensive line commit Enoch Wangoy, announced his reclassification to the class of 2024. He's 6'7", over 300 pounds. He was supposed to be in the class of next year, but he's reclassifying. He's a native of Great Britain, and he will join Florida's program next month. It's an interesting story. He's still new to the game of football, played only 1 year at the high school level, made the move to the United States from Great Britain to come play basketball, but decided to give football a try this past year and played in the Jacksonville area there and continued to learn the game of football, refine his technique. But Florida, very high on the upside he possesses. Again, 6'7", 314 pounds. It's like a big ball of clay they think they can mold there. So we'll see what that kid can do next season over at Florida. Over at Missouri, they picked up 4-star linebacker Dante McClellan. He announced his commitment to Missouri on Monday, chose the Tigers over Louisville, Michigan State, Kentucky, and Tennessee. 6'2", 200 pounds. The number 3 commit for Eli Drinkwitz in the class of 2025. He was rated the number 39 overall linebacker according to On3. And their 2025 class now includes quarterback Matt Zollers and defensive lineman Jason Dowell, just getting started on their group. All right, another name to watch for across SEC recruiting circles, Marion Dye, 6'5", 255 pounds. He's a 3-star edge rusher out of the state of Indiana, and he's getting closer to making a final decision, but he's going to take some official visits, and that includes visiting Georgia and Tennessee. On Monday, he said he's going to commit sometime in July. He's talked about his interest in Georgia. He said, Georgia's Georgia. Can't go wrong with them. I will visit Georgia on June 27th. As for his interest in Tennessee, he said it's all about the relationship with the coaches there. I will go to Tennessee on June 21st. So we'll keep an eye on him. How about over at Auburn? They're keeping an eye on Isaiah Gibson. He is currently a commitment to USC, number 1 edge rusher in the class of 2025, but he's making some official visits and adding Auburn to the mix. So here's what he's got coming. May 31st, this is Isaiah Gibson, number 1 edge rusher in the class of 2025. He'll visit Georgia on May 31st. He'll visit South Carolina on June 7th. He'll visit Auburn on June 11th, Florida on June 14th, and Oklahoma on June 21st. So we'll see where he goes. All right, in basketball news, Carter Knox, number 26 recruit in the ESPN 100 for class of 2024. He is decommitted from Kentucky and recommitted to John Calipari at Arkansas. He told ESPN, throughout my whole recruiting process, Coach Cal always said he wants to make me a pro, and I trust he will do that for me at Arkansas. He also credited his relationship with assistant coach Kenny Payne, former Louisville head coach, who is rejoining Calipari's staff as associate head coach. But Carter Knox, one of the top recruits of the country, averaged 19.8 points in just 24 minutes per game in the Nike EYBL last spring and summer. So former Kentucky recruit following Calipari to Arkansas. How about Drexel transfer Amari Williams? He is committed to Coach Pope and Kentucky. Chose the Wildcats over Mississippi State. Visited Lexington this past weekend. Mark Pope picked up his first big transfer commitment. Amari Williams, 3-time CAA Defensive Player of the Year winner and earned first-team CAA honors as well. Over at Alabama, their program, if you missed this over the weekend, picked up former Auburn point guard Aiden Holloway, former 5-star recruit. Started 26 to 35 games last season for Auburn, averaged 7 points and 2.5 assists. Visited Bama last week and decided to head to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Holloway's the 3rd transfer portal commitment for Bama during this window, joining guards Houston Mallett from Pepperdine and Chris Youngblood from South Florida. Meanwhile, FAU transfer Elijah Martin has committed to play at Florida next season. Said he wanted to stay in the South, play in the SEC, the strongest conference in America. Not my words, he said it. But he's a grad transfer with 1 year of eligibility remaining. Committed to Todd Golden and the Gators over the likes of Alabama, Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Michigan. Was a big part of FAU's Final Four run back in 2023. And a couple more notes here over at Ole Miss. Guard Brandon Murray has entered the transfer portal, and center Musa Cisse has entered the portal as well. So a couple guys who were journeyman to begin with, ended up at Ole Miss, and journeyman once again, heading on to other schools. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Calling back tomorrow on the show. Again, we'll be talking some recruiting with our buddy Brian Smith. And hey, for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, here for you 24/7, streaming all the top stories of the day on YouTube and, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We will talk to you guys tomorrow.